Let's talk about the anti-woke vote, or the anti-woke tax is what I mean. The anti-woke tax. You know, when we talk about people voting against their interests, one of the results of voting against your interests is, in fact, an anti-woke tax. How so? Well, let's go ahead and listen to what this piece from the MSNBC had to say. I think they did a great piece, and I want you to study what they had to say, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
It has been 9 months since President Trump took office with a promise to lower prices on day one. Instead, Americans have seen their household costs rise. As my next guest writes, Trumpist culture wars have made almost everything more expensive, effectively forcing all Americans to pay an anti-woke tax. Adam, what is the anti-woke tax?
Well, the anti-woke tax, I'm using that to refer to the way that the Trump administration defends inflationary economic policies by pointing to, or his defenders by pointing to culture war stuff. So the tariffs are very manly, and they're going to bring back manly jobs. And green energy is woke, so we're not going to spend any money on that. So, your energy prices are going to go up because we don't want to be woke. And this really sort of mirrors, a couple years ago when conservatives were complaining about, quote, woke capital, which isn't really a thing, and saying, well, we're going to sell anti-woke chocolate and beer. And it was more expensive, but, because it was anti-woke, conservatives felt better about buying it. And that's fine, except that now, instead of just spending extra money to buy anti-woke stuff, they're making all of us spend more money because of inflationary economic policies that are justified by saying we're making the country less, quote unquote, woke, which, to be honest, even saying the word woke over and over again feels idiotic because they use it for so many things that nobody actually knows what it means anymore.
You talk about energy. What about food prices? Is it affecting food prices?
I mean, look, Trump is currently in the midst of trying to deport the workforce that, picks our food and gets it to supermarkets. And he's also trying to lower the wages of people who do that work, while at the same time saying, well, maybe we'll bring in even more exploited immigrant workers on visas that we can pay less than minimum wage. So, the reality is that people who benefit from this type of inflationary stuff, like, fossil fuel companies, they're making out great. But the rest of us have to go to the supermarket and pay extra for food that, is more expensive now because Donald Trump and his advisors think the country isn't as white as it should be.
Henrietta, does the analysis track?
It absolutely does. And I go a step further with today's examples alone. There's the most manly of enterprises out there farming, and they have been very distraught at exactly the same components that you're just speaking about. Immigration issues. Not only is it more expensive to hire their labor, but they've got to pay more for the fertilizer that they import, for the steel that goes in their Caterpillar backhoes, their John Deere production, their John Deere manufacturing equipment, all those pieces. But today, the cattle ranchers, the cattlemen of America, are furious at President Trump, so much so that they're now in a Twitter war with one another, going back and forth about the president's trade agenda and these woke policies or anti-woke policies that are now hurting the very base of U.S. agriculture, which is really astonishing to see.
There has to be an admission, though, that Americans voted for this. They voted for what Donald Trump is doing. And there are a lot of Americans who felt like it's such a nebulous thing, but the woke stuff, however they defined it, had gone too far, or they wanted more manufacturing here at home. They wanted to be able to buy American goods, to build things with their own hands. Henrietta, is there a balance you can achieve in bringing that stuff back and also maintaining a functional and healthy economy for everybody, not just the very rich?
The bringing stuff back point is such a good one. You can't re-domicile or repatriate manufacturing when you don't know what the tariff rate is going to be, when you don't have a labor supply, when you don't know what regulations are coming down the pike. And that's exactly what they've seen at car manufacturers, at kitchen appliance manufacturers, at John Deere, at Caterpillar. And that's why when we talk about now needing bailouts, it's for exactly those industries. When we do the farmer bailout that I expect will come and maybe even be a part of how we get the government reopened again, it's going to include an allowance for John Deere and Caterpillar and all those big, huge conglomerates that go into trying to bring you back to the United States. It's more expensive to do business in every single facet that you look at it. That's why there's so much uncertainty.
Adam, you read about those manufacturing jobs. Have we gained any?
No, we've lost manufacturing jobs. I mean, to the extent that, there have been a rise in wages at all, it's been in stuff like hospitality that are not generally portrayed by conservatives as manly. But, the thing about manufacturing is that supply chains are global. So there are a lot of people, I think, who supported Donald Trump's tariffs, on the mistaken belief that, well, I make all my stuff here, so, that'll be great for me, not realizing how much of their supply chain actually comes from abroad. So I think people walked into this in part because they were misled by a president who they trusted to give them accurate information, who, has never actually been willing to do that. And I hope people learn their lesson from that.
I hope people learn their lessons from that. In other words, that anti-woke tax. In other words, that we lost 70,000 jobs the last time that he put out a tariffs, that we're doing the same thing now. It's going to cost us more. That extra cost is in fact a tax that the farmers are needing bodies that they don't have to pick their crops. Which means the crop prices are going to be higher. That's an anti-woke tax that the employees at plants, etc., like what we had in Georgia, all those folks that got arrested because of the problems with their visas. And now that plant is going to be delayed, and which will cause price overruns, etc. That's an anti-woke tax. I mean, you think about all these things that the what you're going to pay for energy, for your electricity this year, because, green energy that comes to us for free after building it out. The sun is a fuel for free. But Donald Trump says it doesn't work. The great scientist in chief says it doesn't work. While China is building miles and miles and miles, square miles and square miles in their deserts of solar panels with distribution systems throughout the country. And we are stuck. That's an anti-woke tax. We have allowed an anti-intellect, a childish buffoon, to rule. And in so ruling, to harm us all. And you have to ask all the sycophants that are following him, specifically all these men that like to claim they're macho men. They want to shut down women. They want to put women back in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant. All those macho men, they cannot stand up to an old, overweight clown, an old, overweight, mentally childish person. Think about that, people. And these are the men to lead our country? These are the men to lead our country. It is time. It is time. It is time. All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict mainstream media that too often bend over backwards to support corporate or bought politicians' wants as opposed to the people's needs for real information to make their lives better. Independent media is the only solution to inform truthfully and factually. Why? Because our loyalties are to you, the ones who fund us with small dollar contributions and subscriptions. Please consider supporting our independent media platforms by subscribing to our Egberto Off the Record newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. It's an investment that pays incalculable dividends.